What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It's the post-match pint here from Malone's Bar. We're on the roof. We're always here. It's good to be back for the new season. If you're in the area, it's on Sucky Hall Lane. I'm sure you all know where it is. Jump in, get a beer. Brilliant atmosphere down the stairs, as it always is. I've got Kenny and Stuart with me for this post-match pint. Kenny, comfortable win in the end today. Good to get off with a win for the new campaign, but what do you make of it overall?
I mean, I think before we talk about the game, I think we need to recognise the pre-game atmosphere, right? Because that's why we're lucky to be Celtic fans. The tifo, the flag, just the emotion, walk on, booming out. You can't. That's why Carter Vickers and Jota signed, because you could go around every stadium in Britain this weekend and find nothing that's a patch on that.
Absolutely.
Superb pre-match atmosphere, incredible, and that is why Celtic is unique. In terms of the game, I always think the first game of the season, one of the primary things you want to do is lay down a marker, let people know that if they're going to wrestle this title off you, it's going to take a lot. I don't think we quite did that. I thought after 2 minutes we were going to do that. We had a brilliant start, trademark Postecoglou start, loads of movement, loads of interplay, early goal, Hatate and O'Reilly linking up superbly. I thought Greg Taylor was a real standout in the first 15 minutes. He plays the inverted position really well now, Greg Taylor, playing some really nice balls into Maeda.
I was impressed with him today, I was.
I mean, he's a bit unfashionable, right? But at the end of the day, he's very effective.
And that was tactically, he seems to have really gained a yard or two in that regard, I think, as well.
Yeah, towards us, from Christmas onwards, he's been excellent. But then there was a bit of a drop-off after about 15 minutes, and I think we need to recognise that that's a bit of a problem. You can't play whirlwind football for 15 minutes and then go through a bit of a lull, because teams recognise that, and big teams in the Champions League will handle that easily. I think there needs to be a bit more of a sort of consistent level of performance throughout the course of a game. And then I thought at half-time that would correct itself, because Postecoglou would get through them. It actually didn't. We were sloppy in possession in the start of the second half. That sort of lull continued. And then it's a moment of world-class magic from someone that, is worth way more than 6 million that puts us out of sight, because you get nervous, don't you? The fans were getting nervous. The classic problem, if you're only 1-0 up at home, is you hit 70 minutes. They come in, you get nervous, and you drop 2 points. And it had some of the hallmarks in that. But when you get somebody like Jota that turns up and just blazes one into the top corner, it takes all the sting out of it.
Do you know one of the things that I thought as well? The goal came at just the right time, because if we hadn't got that second goal before that, the nerves would have kicked in. And that way, flag day is a bit different for your kind of standard day. You want it to be a bit of an occasion. The atmosphere, as you say, was brilliant. Definitely plenty of singing in different pockets of the stadium. Wasn't it just sort of north curve led today? I thought there was a real cohesive atmosphere around the ground, which was really cool. But I think if it'd gone 5 more minutes, and definitely 10 more, that would have been the point where you begin to get a bit nervy. It might translate to the pitch and the team as well. So I think to maintain that sense of occasion, the goal came at just the right time.
Because they never parked the bus. They came and had a bit of a go. I mean, Johnny Hayes should have scored. Other instances where they could have scored.
Aye.
So it was a bit uncomfortable. But overall, coming out with 2-0, they're no mugs, Aberdeen. It was a great day. It's just brilliant to have Celtic back.
Aye, absolutely. I think Aberdeen will do better than they did last season on today's evidence. A lot of new players, but they did have that spell. As Kenny says, I thought maybe the first 20-25 minutes were really good. The 10 minutes before half-time, Aberdeen did come into it. They were getting some space in behind the midfield. That thing we talked about this morning on the Twitter space, actually, the question about when we turn over the ball, the space in behind the midfield, in behind the press, because we're really high, and I thought in the first 20 minutes, half an hour, we'd done that really well. Like, we weren't letting Aberdeen breathe at all. But that 10 minutes before half time, they grew, they were having counter-attacks, and as Kenny says, Johnny Hayes probably has their best chance of the game, and he puts it wide.
No, they fashioned that chance, and there was a moment maybe 5 minutes before that where Stephen Welsh stepped out he anticipated a situation, but he anticipated it wrongly, and Aberdeen managed to get an overload on the other side as well. And that to me is just screaming out to me that the one position, because Celtic, we saw with the substitutions, the way they impacted the game, and the way that you had different options that could come on and change the way that Celtic, especially in the final third, had a bit of potency. You can see the strength and depth in the squad, but those situations, that Stephen Welsh one, and then the chance for Johnny Hayes, and there were numerous in the second half as well, but that was closer to me in the first half, so I could see it a bit better. I look at that and that just screams to me, we need a number 6. We need a screener for these Champions League games, because otherwise we're going to get hurt by those turnovers, those instances. Conversely to that, though, in terms of the Champions League, we're going to actually get the chance to counter-attack a bit rather than just trying to unpick a lock for 90 minutes. So I'm quite excited about that side of it. But yeah, the number 6 thing, now I look at it, and even Callum McGregor, who can kind of adapt his game to playing that role somewhat of a water carrier, but maybe a water carrier that can run a bit and sort of engineer the play going forward. It's not his natural role. It's not his natural inclination to do that. And I think we need someone whose natural inclination is to occupy those spaces and particularly read those situations a move or two and a second or two before they actually present. Because I think unless we do that, unless we've got someone that can do that in the European game, we're not going to be able to balance the midfield in the way that we need to secure a result.
Aye, that's a big debate, Kenny, just now, this whole sitting midfield area and whether we need to bring another one in. And it'll rumble on, whether we get one or not is another issue. But
is it a debate though, Paul?
I think it's a debate, because the manager's
we won the league
said,
without one, right?
Aye, we won the league without one. The manager's already said, kind of threw cold water on it by saying that's not the kind of player necessarily that he wants in there, but I think that might just be dismissing a media question because we've been linked with players who look like they have the qualities. But as I said this morning again, we could go and spend 6 or 8 million on a sitting midfielder, we'll still get Van Wagen in the Champions League, potentially.
Yeah, but you need... Well, you need to play with 2 defensive midfielders, but he's rarely played with 2 defensive midfielders.
Never.
He plays with 5 forwards, right? Which was a bit unnerving when that first happened, but he won the league doing that. Now, let's face it, Callum McGregor is a very unique individual. He can take that massive demand in the middle of the park. Callum McGregor's not worth 6 million. Callum McGregor's worth 26 million, right? And we're lucky to have him there.
Totally.
But there's 2 things. He might get injured. Say he gets injured, he's getting a bit older. He's historically had a great injury record. Say he gets injured. What do we do? Do we put James McCarthy in? Do we put Moy in? Do we put Ideguchi in? They're all huge drop-offs in terms of what we're doing. So we need cover. But secondly, can we realistically go to the Bernabeu? Can we go to the new camp and play with 5 forwards? Because that's what we're going to be faced with in a few weeks' time. I don't think we can. Postecoglou is an amazing man. He's a much better understanding of the game than me. But I would imagine in those situations, you're going to need to play with 2 deep. We've only got 1. So I'm a bit nervous about it, and I think if we've got any funds left, what I think we need to do is explore the loan market. We now have no loans. We've got 1 loan in the form of Jens, but I think that's just us protecting ourselves in terms of his output. Let's get a serious loan in, and it might be in that area that we can get someone with real quality and real weight that can give us the cover and give us that versatility in the Champions League for 6, because it's a problem. It is a problem, I think.
Aye, no, you're spot on, mate. I think, so what my head does is it thinks, what is the makeup of that midfield going to be? You're absolutely right about Callum McGregor. He's a Swiss Army knife. He can play multiple roles, and Celtic are blessed to have someone that they can plug in a few different ways. So in a Champions League situation, I think of the way that I would ask my central 3 to play. And I think you're having 1 player, so you're playing either Hatate or Matt O'Reilly. You're playing one of those players to go forward. Then with Callum McGregor, I'm thinking, right, what you can do is you can ask him to play in one of the more advanced roles, but he can cover in a defensive sense as well as offering something going forward. So he is someone you can have in a kind of hybrid sort of role. And then in the defensive area, as you say, I think the loan shout is a great shout. I think that's the area that Celtic do need a body, because Ideguchi's an unknown quantity, right? He might have something beyond what we've seen as of yet, because we know the demands in the Japanese players that they've been playing a lot of football and the durability, and they just needed a bit of rest. And
incidentally, Ideguchi's injured again.
Aye, so that's obviously going to be an issue. James McCarthy's lost. It happens with a lot of young players that break through early. You saw a similar thing with the likes of Wayne Rooney, maybe with Robbie Keane as well. These players that hit the scene at 16, 17, their legs go, and their pace tends to go a wee bit quicker than players that don't at that age. Like, not in every case, but more often than not. I think that's happened with James McCarthy. I don't really think he's got the mobility that we would need. And I don't think he's naturally a player that was in that position. It's not like Scott Brown, who even if he did lose a yard, or Neil Lennon had no pace at all, but could read the situations and was defensive minded. McCarthy, that wasn't his game when he was at his peak. So to ask him to do that, he's kind of moulded into that role just by virtue of the attributes that he's lost. So you're right, Kenny. We need somebody that's job is to play in those areas. And another aspect of that I think is important is don't just go for a quality player for a quality player's sake. Go for a quality player that understands and is perfectly plug-inable to the Ange philosophy right away. Rather than having to adapt the philosophy to them, make sure it's someone that can come in and immediately impact the game in the way that Celtic like to play. So that the philosophy, even if you're like slightly rein back where the line is defensively and the press is starting, it's got to be someone that understands the way we want to play, because I don't think the essence of that will change. I think it will just be, we'll maybe do it in pockets and in different areas of the pitch, different times of the game. Yeah. So that's the key thing. But I love the loan shout.
Plug-inable, is that a new word?
Plug-inable. Plug-inable?
To be fair to Ange, he's brought in a few plug-inable players. Kenny, in that first half, who were the standouts for us?
Greg Taylor, initially, although he kind of faded. Matt O'Reilly, I thought, really just dictated the game for the first sort of 15 minutes. It was just so much class about O'Reilly
really good as well.
And Hatate alongside him, but it didn't last long. I mean, it was wonderful at the start. I thought it was going to be a goal glut. I mean, score after 2 minutes, but it didn't last long. So there wasn't, I would say, huge standouts in that first half. I thought Kyogo, he's not a problem. Obviously, he's a very uniquely talented person. You absolutely love him to death.
Me too.
And Norwich was a friendly, so I don't necessarily need to bring that into a series of him having weak performances. Yeah. But there's a growing argument that Giakoumakis could pose more of an aggressive threat in the Scottish game. So throughout the course of that entire, we get the ball in wide area, dangerous wide areas, so much but our opponents are so deep, right? They're defending their 6-yard box, they're defending their 18-yard box. We've got the ball in lovely wide positions. It's very, very difficult for Furuhashi to influence a game when he's just trapped on the penalty spot with an army of people around him. It's not that difficult for Giakoumakis to attack the ball when you swing it in. And I'm not saying let's go cheap and play long balls. It's the complete antithesis of Postecoglou's philosophy. Of course, that is the wrong thing to do. But I think there's a growing curiosity in my mind about, in the league, who do we start? We have to have a decision. Who do we start? Against Ross County, I'd be curious to start Giakoumakis.
See, just on Kyogo, a lot of low crosses. I thought in the period he was on a lot of low crosses, which
and they never really
are what he's to feed off of. But didn't get much joy today. He had 2 good chances, one on the stretch, where I think if he just moved a split second earlier, he would probably have finished it.
What I would say about that one is I think a slower player than Kyogo doesn't even get near that ball.
Aye. And one, I think there was one that was a really good block by an Aberdeen centre half as well in the first half. But I do agree he was on the outside of the game. Giakoumakis did come on, had a great chance as well, by the way.
Giakoumakis missed one absolute set.
He did, yeah.
The North Stand celebrated it. That's how sure they were it was going to be a goal.
Yeah, he didn't have a great outing, really. But.
Aye.
But Giakoumakis is a player. He's got the intelligence to get in those positions.
Yes. Aye, absolutely. Other than that, second half, the standout again, Jota. We've briefly mentioned it already. We talked about it in the full-time reaction as well, but he's just got so much to his game. And the boy that sits in front of me said today when he scored that goal, he was like, "Aye, brilliant goal. He can do more of that." But and I thought, what a way to bring him down a bit by saying after scoring that screamer, he should do that more. But I kind of agree, because one of the criticisms I had of Jota last season was that he cut inside an awful lot and shot for distance and blazed it out the stadium. But he's got that in his locker. So I would like to see the shots for distance be a bit, and I know, listen, every time you cut inside you can't do that, but that goal today will go something to beat that for goal of the season.
It was a fantastic goal. I think with Jota, I want to see less of the kind of, the term in snooker, a shot to nothing, right? Sometimes I think that last season especially there was a bit of can I just melt this, whereas what I would like to see from him is, in terms of the decision making, does seem to have improved. I want to see a bit more control and a bit more sort of tact about how he can maybe goes about that. But the one thing I'd say about Jota, I thought at one point he was looking a bit slack in the early stages, and I think he warmed into the game. And I think conversely, a lot of the rest of the Celtic team kind of went the think they went the other way. So they started really well, and then it kind of went the other way. I think I want to come back to the Kyogo thing. I think that Aberdeen actually played very, very well today. I think they were very organised, and they did, as you say, offered a bit of a threat, Kenny. But I think that without parking the bus, as the term goes, they defended tactically very intelligently, and they totally negated Kyogo's attributes. And I think it required the substitution for Postecoglou to present them with a different set of questions by bringing Giakoumakis on. And we mentioned in the Twitter space earlier today, I've predicted, because we're all doing our predictions as it goes at the start of the season, I reckon Giakoumakis will end up top scorer.
So does Kenny.
Because he will score goals against the Scottish opposition. You know those games, and he'll score gluts because he scores in bunches, we know that. He'll score goals in those games, and he'll probably, I reckon, because of the Postecoglou identity and approach, he's more likely to start with Kyogo Furuhashi in European games. So that means the door is open for Giakoumakis to start more Premiership games, and I think for that reason, that's why he's going to be top scorer. And I think the one thing I would say is, without going all happy clapper, it's so good to have a Celtic squad that is blessed with different solutions to problems. You know, like have options on the bench and being able to impact it in different ways. That's something that I think we actually needed today. Otherwise, Aberdeen could have got a lucky goal and maybe went away with a point.
Aye, absolutely. See, we talked about this just before we come on, Kenny. We periods today a bit sloppy in the ball at times. I think everybody had a shot. Juranovic, O'Reilly, even sometimes. Welsh gave it away 2 or 3 times in the first half. You could put that down to rustiness, the first game, but as Stuart says there, this team has the quality, and that piece of quality from Jota just settled us down and secured the victory.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one why they dropped off. Maybe it was a bit of an adrenaline drop. I mean, when they came into the stadium, the players, there was thousands of fans greeting them. That fanfare before the game, psychologically, it's an incredible amount of stuff for them to take in. And then they took an early lead, and maybe after 15, 20 minutes, just as human beings, it all just fell a little bit. But that's not isolated that has happened. It's happened repeatedly, actually, last season, that you have blitzed people for 20 minutes, then there's a drop-off. I think that does need to change. There needs to be more consistency in the output. But, I mean, in the second half, I thought Juranovic was a bit weak. Actually, he was getting caught behind a couple of times. He was giving the ball away a wee bit and towards the second half. Then when Ralston... But the brilliant thing is the depth in the squad. That's probably the best bench. When have we ever seen a bench? I can't remember seeing a bench of that strength in a long time for Celtic.
You're right.
I mean, I can't remember all the benches under Brendan Rodgers, but you'll be struggling to find people from goalkeeper right through to every position. Real class. Look at the three that come on: Abada, Turnbull, Giakoumakis. They could easily take the jerseys in any given day in the starting position. And Maeda must know that. Kyogo must know that.
And that's a good
Hatate
thing.
must know that.
Game-changing
really
players, aren't
If when they're going to bed at night, they must realise, if I have 2 or 3 games, bad games, I'm out, I'm gone. And that's really healthy because it keeps you driving the squad. And yeah, that was something notable today, is just looking up and seeing the strength and depth in the bench, because it's something we've not had in a long time.
Absolutely, I agree. And Ralston and Moy come on as well, because we can use 5 subs now. So the bench is, not only is it stronger than it's been in a while, we can put more players on it, and we can bring on more players, which maybe at some periods might interrupt rhythm a wee bit, because we've seen that at times in some games. But a lot of strength across the squad, and I was quite impressed with Moy in the little period he was on today.
Much better today than I thought he was in the game against Norwich.
He's got a brain. He has got a football brain.
Absolutely got a brain. I watched him a lot when he played at Huddersfield, and from what I've heard or read, rather since then, he's been tended to play in China and stuff in a slightly more deeper role, but naturally he is a player that will influence games in the middle third and in the final third of the pitch. And what impressed me today about it was there was a couple of noteworthy things. Firstly, Postecoglou knows him. He trusts him. You can see that by the fact that he's had, because so little football in pre-season, hasn't been with the squad long training, yet Postecoglou feels in that game situation that he can rely upon him and put him in there with full confidence. So I think that's point number 1. Point number 2, he looks sharper, very quickly. Very quickly his sharpness has increased. And I don't know how he would last in terms of minutes in the legs and whether he could play a full 90 minutes yet. But I would have no qualms starting him and playing him for an hour, say, even at this stage, because in a Premiership game anyway, because he looks to me like he's more than up to the task. And you're right, mate. Football brain, intelligent, and I think he's at that age now as well where he can take on responsibility. And that's one thing in the squad, because we've got so many young, talented players. Having someone at his age and someone just that has know-how that's been about a bit, you know. He's played at the highest level in World Cups. He's played in England. He's been in various countries, and he's someone that can accept responsibility and someone that has the manager's confidence, and that's big for us.
I mean, he looks a bit kind of slow, right?
Yeah.
He looks a bit kind of sluggish, but I don't know if you've watched him at Huddersfield. Is that just his style?
He's never really
not
had that.
necessarily
Never been quick, has he?
unfit.
No,
He's
he's never had that yard of pace. He's got the yard in the brain. He's got the intelligence, the reading of the game, and the one thing that I think he's really, really good at. He's good at reading the gaps between the lines, whether that's playing a pass or making a run. He knows space. He knows how to find
He
space.
can read the game very well.
He's really good.
A continued theme for last season, Kenny, was the defensive solidity. I thought, obviously, Aberdeen did get in behind us once or twice, and they missed that big chance through Hayes, but I thought Cameron Carter-Vickers today, he had a goal-saving challenge right at the end. And again, the whole mantra of we never stop. He's in behind, it's 2-0, it's right in added time, but he's breaking his neck to get back, as you would expect him to do, but he makes a great challenge, and then he gets up to berate players further up the pitch, and that intensity in his defending is something that's become so reliable.
I mean, I thought it wasn't just that was a spectacular tackle right in 92 minutes or whatever it was, but the way he handled that Aberdeen forward the whole game, he didn't get anywhere near him. It was just, had him at arm's length the whole time, and he was a bit of a handful, the guy, but he had no chance. And he's been really clumsy in pre-season, Carter. I mean, it looked like Ibiza had sort of played out on him. But it was, and that made me a little bit concerned, because occasionally you give somebody they're great, you give them a long-term deal, and it all becomes a bit comfortable when they drop off. And I thought, hopefully this doesn't happen here. It looks like there's no way that's going to happen here. I mean, he upped his game. He was an absolute standout back there. We'd struggle without him. I mean, he's an absolute ox. The whole base of the side sort of revolves around him.
You're right.
He's only 24. He's probably going to go to a World Cup. He's not been an international before, or he's played very limited caps. He's going to kick on. Celtic will either see out a brilliant career with him, or we're going to sell him for a lot of money. Incredible. It just proves how advantageous it is getting a good loan with an option to buy.
Absolutely.
Because to get someone of that level for $6 million at the base of your side is incredible. And that was a really professional, solid outing from him today. He was my man of the match. I mean, it's a bit unusual, but I thought just the influence he had on the whole side, I would give him it.
I think he's one of the players with the pre-season like, listen, boys, I'll turn it on when it matters, right? Just let me have these ones.
I think Carter-Vickers, I think he was the second most important signing last season other than Joe Hart. I think Joe Hart's culture setter, tone setter, knows the game at the back, and is a leader, Joe Hart. And I think his experience at the very top level, at the very biggest clubs, is something that Celtic need. And I think in the Champions League this season in particular, it's going to be absolutely massive, not just his abilities as a goalkeeper. I think the way that he will marshal that defence is huge. But his job is made immeasurably easier by having a player of Cameron Carter-Vickers' quality in there. And I think he's going to be massive for us again this season. Also, I think one of the things that's really notable about him is how much he plays above his height, because he never seems to get beaten in the air, but he's not actually the biggest centre half.
No, he's not.
But he's really stocky, really quick, reads the game superbly.
Aggressive in the right way as well.
Yeah, absolutely that.
And calm, he's so calm. When have you ever seen him flustered?
No, he's never flustered in terms of what he's doing, but what he does do as well is, like as you say, barking orders, berating. So he's got that bit as well, and I like that. Conversely, and he did get a goal today, Stephen Welsh, and there's obviously been a few clubs from what we're reading interested in him and maybe acquiring his services. I definitely think he should be part of the first team squad, but I would if I was being greedy, I want a number 6 first. But if we're going to get one of them on loan, maybe we could sign a defender or vice versa. I really would like. I think
Jens is that guy, but isn't it?
I don't know. We don't know. We'll see. I think that is what they've done. They've recruited him with a view to, right, that's the end of the the defensive recruitment. Having spoke to a few people that I kind of know that cover Ligue 1 in France, the suggestion was he had a bit of a mistake in him and that there was a bit of inconsistency in terms of his style of play. I must say, when he came on in the friendly that we watched him in, he looked like a Rolls Royce right away. Like, he looked really, really good, albeit against a pretty poor Norwich team that day. So, if I was being really greedy, I would like another defender in there, I think. And Stephen Welsh, I think this is going to be a season where we'll get an idea of what his ceiling truly is as a footballer. Yeah. We'll see where he can truly get to, because it's going to be a stern examination of his credentials. And I thought today there were a few mistakes, albeit he's a real threat in the opposing box.
Yeah.
We've seen that on a few occasions from him now.
I think the mistakes were mainly on the ball, weren't they? As I say, sloppy with some passes.
His reading of the game wasn't great at times as well.
It's a tall order being
Young
a Postecoglou centre-half.
Absolutely.
It's a big ask.
It is. Any final reflections? Ross County next weekend will be easy.
I think centre forward's a conundrum. I do. Maybe that's a bit knee-jerk, and maybe that's unfair on Furuhashi, because he's been superb. And there's a magic in his feet that you can't replace, and there's a magic in his feet that Giacomakis does not have. That being said, there's an aggression in Giacomakis that has won us a lot of games. Yeah. I think that's a question mark. I don't think I would change the side. Maeda had a bit of a difficult outing, I would say, today. Abada's breathing down his neck. Turnbull with a real presence when he came on. He's breathing down Hatati's neck, but Hatati's been so successful pre-season, it's not a time to move him. So I think we probably go again with the same side. Yeah. But I'd like to see us play with a bit more consistency across the game, rather than playing in fits and bursts. And hopefully that sort of drop-off and slackness today was just a function of playing in a real carnival environment. And I'm really confident. We're top of the league. Yeah. Nice way to finish. Yes. Nice way to finish the first round of games. Let's hope we're sat here in 8 months' time saying the same thing.
Aye, absolutely. There you go. First weekend's finished. Celtic are sitting top of the table. Like this video, comment with your own thoughts on the game below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you next week for the build-up to that game against Ross County. Cheers.